All right, so what's going to happen is this. Right now, we're going to go over all of the team whatever seasons, stats, and standings. So here we go. Every season, we're going to do it for every season. And then we're going to go and for every team, and then we're going to go from there. So Air Force, 3-9 and 1-7. You can see they lost a lot. They beat San Jose State, UNLV, and Army, but really nothing else. Akron, 5-7, 4-4, got beat by Rutgers respectably. Ohio State a little bit more, but they beat Michigan State, AA, beat Ohio. You take a look, then they went normal, and they started to lose big at the end of the year. Alabama, we already went through this. They beat a few ranked teams, including Miami, USF, LSU, 56-28, Oklahoma. They should have lost that game. They barely beat Arkansas, and they lost to Michigan. That was a big one. Appalachian State, 5-7. Louisiana, South Carolina. They beat South Carolina. That was big, losing to Clemson. They lost to Georgia, and then everything fell off there. That's how they ended. Arizona, they beat Houston. Washington, they were good, but they lose to Boise State. Got beat by California, beat UCLA, lost to Oregon, then kind of won out. Beat USF and all that. Lost to Arizona State. And then a bowl game beat Stanford. Might have been all right. They beat Boise State, Arizona State, and then they lost 3 straight, a close one to Oregon. If that would have sent shockwaves through the world had they done it. Normal results, beat Arizona and lost Arkansas State in a bowl game. Arkansas, they were the team that, well, they were all right. Then they started to win and win big. And then they kind of catered out. They lost to Texas, 56-51 in a great game. We remember that. They beat Missouri. Then they beat Oklahoma and lost Alabama in a classic. Arkansas State, as you can see, they lost to LSU big, but they beat Texas State and they beat NC State. 2 big ones. They lose to Southern Miss. They got killed by Missouri and killed by Arkansas. Georgia State, Monroe, and then they beat Arizona State in the bowl game. Army lost them all, but when you're looking at this, close to Pitt a little bit, and then they just got blown away. North Texas a little bit close. UTSA close near the end, but that's all right. We know their mission in life. It's a lot higher than football. Florida, and you take a look at Auburn, they lost to Miami and to Florida. Lost to Texas A&M. That was close. Lost to Florida State, USF. They did what they should have done, and they beat Boise in the conference title game, I think. They're 4-4. No, they were in a bowl first week. Sorry about that. Ball State, 3-9 and 1-6. You see Illinois, Wisconsin, Indiana's there. They beat Indiana. That was a big upset. And they got beat by Notre Dame, and then they did what they were supposed to do, but no bowl game there. Baylor beat lost to BYU, and then SMU lost to Oklahoma. That was a tough game. They ended up losing to Nebraska, and then they won all the rest of their games, beating Kansas at the end, West Virginia, and they beat Washington State in the bowl game. That was Baylor. Boise State. They lost Arizona State and Oregon. We thought that was bad. Beat Arizona, it was a good team. Lost Stanford, beat Washington State. Lost USC. Lost to Washington. Then they took care of business the rest of the way, losing to Auburn in the end. Boston College, you lost to Marshall. Then you started winning. They beat Rutgers, and Rutgers had a really good year. Missouri, they lose to them by 13. They lost to Penn State by 18. Lost to SMU. Lost to North Carolina and lost to Washington. Bowling Green, Texas. Double A there in Michigan. Oh, they were 4-8. Got killed by the national champs. And then Penn State, Toledo, Eastern, and then they started to win the games that they're closest to. That's the thing. That's just one of the teams that I want to be in independently. They would have had a good fine season if they were in independent. The Buffalo Bulls, they lost everything. Navy, West Virginia, UMass, Marshall, UConn, Syracuse, lost to Rutgers, respectable. They beat Akron, lost to BC, beat Ball State, and then lost their last two. BYU, a team that may be next year. So Baylor, they beat them, lost to Hawaii. Air Force, Wyoming, Nevada were good. The nobodies beat UNLV. Utah State lost to Kansas State, lost to Colorado, lost to Utah, lost to Kansas, beat Houston, and lost to NC State in a bowl game. California beat Fresno, lost to USC. San Diego State, there, they scored a lot of points. Cal did, lost to Wake Forest, and they lost to Boise. They beat Syracuse, Stanford down, and USF. Big there. Central Michigan got killed by Ohio State and Michigan. Lost Illinois, and then Ball State, okay, and then lost Ohio and Eastern Michigan. Beat Florida International, Cincinnati, Bowling Green. They got killed. Toledo, Western Michigan, and Northern Illinois, they lost. So now, how about UC Charlotte? There we go, 2-10, 1-8 overall. Got beat by NC State. They beat Duke. Lost to Tennessee. Looking down, lost to Middle Tennessee State 15-14. One of the lowest scoring games of the year. Tulane they beat, and that was the second one. I mean, they were close in a lot of them. Cincinnati 5-7, 3-5. They lost to Michigan. They lost their first four. They beat Kent, Bowling Green, Ohio. Lost to Central. Beat West Virginia. Beat Kansas State by 1. Losing to Iowa State and TCU at the very end. Now Clemson, they made the playoffs. They beat Georgia. Remember our first game, App State, Georgia Tech, Georgia Southern. They beat Kennesaw. And really, they didn't play a ranked team. They lost to Georgia Tech. They beat Pitt at Pitt. I remember that. South Carolina, they beat Tennessee in a conference title game to get in, but then they lost to Texas. Coastal Carolina, Jacksonville they beat, but then they started losing. Georgia Tech, South Carolina, Georgia, Clemson, Marshall. But then they beat Kennesaw. Virginia, big win. App State they lose, but they beat Troy. Lost to Georgia Southern, then Georgia State. Colorado on a unique team, 11-3, 7-1, but they didn't do anything. Somebody, but they lost to Kansas big. And that was big. Utah, they won. And then they beat Oklahoma State. So who else did they lose to? They lost to Hawaii. If they didn't lose to Hawaii, they would have made the playoffs. They lost to Utah in the conference title game, and then they beat Notre Dame in a bowl, 38-37. The AA here, Colorado State, they lost big. They beat UNLV, beat Hawaii. Texas, they lost barely. Mississippi State Air Force. Nevada, Toledo, Wyoming. There's Toledo that lost to them, Utah State, and they lose in their bowl game to Missouri. Duke, East Carolina, Vanderbilt, Charlotte. They went 3-9. So East Carolina, Vanderbilt, Middle Tennessee State, and they lost every other game. Tough season for them. Eastern Carolina, they lost to Duke, beat Middle Tennessee, lost to North Carolina, 4-8. Vanderbilt, Charlotte, and then they just lost those 3 ranked games in a row. Some were close. They beat Florida Atlantic, lost to Tulsa and North Texas. Eastern Michigan, 4-8, 3-5 in the conference. New Mexico, UMass, Washington. Ohio State, they got shut out. One of the few shutouts in the season. Miami, they lost. Central Michigan and Akron, they won. Buffalo, Western Michigan at the end. Florida now. They beat Miami, and they looked good going through the year. Then they lose to Ole Miss, who was a good team, UAB. Then they lose to Georgia, lose to Texas. Big time and big time. They lost to LSU, barely, who made the national title. They could have won the national title. They could have won the national title. Florida State, they lost to Alabama, conference championship, and lost to Kentucky. So Florida, a lot there that they lost to. Florida Atlantic, 2-10. Their 2 wins were to South Alabama. They almost beat Florida. They lost to UAB. They beat Michigan State. Everybody beat Michigan State. Florida International, 1-12. They got killed all the way. Not even close in any of their games except for UCF. They lost Central Michigan, New Mexico State, South Alabama, and they beat Jacksonville State. But they made a bowl game and almost beat Nebraska. Go figure. Florida State, 8-5 and 6-2. So they lost Alabama by 3. How about that? They beat USF. They lost to Notre Dame by a lot. They beat Florida. They lost to USF. And then Ole Miss was there. So Fresno State was 5-7. They beat Arizona State. That's the biggest thing. And they beat Arizona State, and that was pretty much it. Georgia, on the other hand, 10-3, lost to Clemson. They went through beating people, killing people. Then they lose at South Carolina. That was huge. Then Ohio State, they lose in the bowl game. So now you take a look at Georgia Southern, 8-5. Kennesaw, Georgia loses. Jacksonville, Clemson loses. So they lost to the top ones, but then, they lost to Georgia Tech in a big one. Boise State, they were close. They got killed by South Carolina. They were all right, a mid-tier team. They'd be like 11-2 in Georgia Southern. So we'll get through these. Georgia State, 2-10. Beat Kennesaw and James Madison. Georgia Tech. Well, taking a look, 9-4. They almost beat Florida State. That was in Ireland. And then they barely lost to Clemson. So, good team. Barely losing to Miami. Good. Then they got blown out by Georgia. That was the killer. That was the killer. Hawaii. They beat BYU. They beat Colorado. They beat New Mexico State. They beat Utah State. Houston, 5-7. They got killed by Texas A&M. They almost beat Texas State. And that was it. They beat Texas Tech. Illinois got killed by Kansas. Worked their way back. Got beat by Notre Dame by 3. Purdue. They got beat by Rutgers in Wisconsin. And that was it. And they played Rutgers in a bowl game. And beat Rutgers after losing to them. Indiana, 7-6, 4-3. Win by Wisconsin. Notre Dame, they won. That killed them. They got killed by Michigan as well. And there we go. Iowa. Remember when they were supposedly the best team? Iowa State, they got killed. Number 1, they got beat. They beat Ole Miss, and then Nebraska, they lost 10-6. Iowa State, 8-5. They won, then they lost the next 3. They lost to Arkansas State, Tulane, Monroe. They lost to Arkansas. That's about it. They beat Indiana in a bowl game. Jacksonville State, there's my cat Pishu. Jacksonville State, 3-9. Winners over Kennesaw, Georgia State, and Liberty. Killed by Georgia. JMU, 6-7. Charlotte, they went 1-5, but they beat a bunch of nobodies. But Maryland was good at the end. Kansas in a bowl game, they got killed. Kansas, win-win. They got beat by UTSA. Kansas did. Tulsa, all the way to Oklahoma, they almost beat them. And Iowa State, they barely lost to Baylor. That was Kansas. Kansas State, 6-7. Loss. And lost by 2. And that'll be it. Kennesaw, 1 win. One win, got killed by everybody except for UTEP. Kent, they lost to Pitt early, got killed by Ohio State, beat by Michigan. And they got beat. Kentucky. Lost by 7. Liberty. 5-7. Old Dominion, Maryland. There we go. Louisiana. I don't care anymore. They lost. They lost big to Missouri. But they beat Texas Tech in a bowl game. Louisiana Tech. Losing NC State. Losing LSU by 8. Beating Northern Illinois. Louisville. Home of Johnny Unitas. Arkansas barely lost. Clemson, big time loss. Kentucky blew them away, and that was it. LSU, almost national champions. Got blown out for the 1 loss. Win, loss. Marshall. So that's Marshall. Maryland. Start off with a win, a few losses. Barely lost to Oregon, lost to Rutgers. Memphis, 10-3. How about this? Losing barely to Tennessee, barely to Wake Forest, barely to North Carolina. They could have done it, and then they beat UNLV. Miami. I'll tell you what hurt. That Syracuse loss. So Miami, 4-8. Western Michigan got killed by Michigan. Really nothing on it's unspectacular. National champs. We did this before, almost Toledo, a lot of nobodies, but then they beat Oregon. Then they beat Ohio State 3 in a row. Beat Alabama, beat LSU. Michigan State 6-7. Killed. Lost to Florida Atlantic. So Middle Tennessee State 3-9. They beat Charlotte, beat UTEP, beat New Mexico State. Minnesota losing to Missouri, Tulane, and beating Louisiana Tech, losing their last 4. They lost to Rutgers, Mississippi State. Lost by 7, LSU. How about that? Missouri, remember they were number 1? They were number 1 all the way to here, and then they got killed. Then they were beat by Tulane, and that tough. Then Arkansas win. They lost LSU by 6 in conference title, and then went to a bowl. Navy, a win there, but a lot of losses. So NC State. So Tennessee is up there. They won. Look, NC State was 5th. Lost to Wake Forest and Arkansas State, which was big. Duke, they lost to Memphis and then beat BYU, North Carolina, Nebraska. Oh, they beat Oklahoma that first game. Baylor, they beat Iowa 10-6. How about that? Nevada, 2-10, wins over Wyoming. And Troy lost to Boise State by 7. New Mexico, Eastern Michigan, New Mexico State Air Force, Wyoming, Nevada, and Hawaii. Bowl game loss 37-10. New Mexico State. So New Mexico State. So New Mexico State. They play anybody ranked. Texas A&M, they got killed. North Carolina lost to Tennessee. Lost to NC State and Louisville in the playoffs. North Texas 7-6, lost Texas State, Texas Tech. Texas, Army, Rice, East Carolina, and Washington. So Northern Illinois, they beat Purdue, lost to Purdue, lost to Notre Dame, 6-7. They lost 7, then they won 6. Ball State, Western Michigan, Akron, Miami, Central Michigan, and Louisiana Tech. Northwestern 5-7. Yeah, Ohio State, they didn't do really well. I mean, they did all right against some. Notre Dame 9-5. They lost to Indiana, big red flag. They lost to Texas A&M. 3, so the USC game was a loss. Wisconsin, then Colorado. Ohio. So Syracuse, a win over Syracuse, Central Michigan. 4-8, not that great. Ohio State, great all year, undefeated until they got to Michigan. They lost to Michigan, lost in a conference championship, Beat Georgia, lost to Michigan a third time. Lost 3 of their last 4. To who? Michigan. Oklahoma. This was the season that could have been. They lost to Alabama hurt. They beat Texas State and they lost to Arkansas. Oklahoma State lost to Kansas and Arkansas. Lost to Baylor, Arizona State, and Oklahoma. Old Dominion. So Old Dominion. So Ole Miss. There we go. You have Double A, Louisiana. They only beat Louisiana by 2. They beat 2 Double A's. They lost LSU, Arkansas, and Georgia. Could have beat Arkansas. Oregon, 11-3. First loss to Michigan. Conference championship to USC, and then Texas. Oregon State. Lost to Arizona State. Penn State. So now you have Pitt. 11-3. They start off well. They lost to West Virginia. Started to get on track. Beat Syracuse. Big game. SMU. Beat Virginia and then got beat by Clemson and killed by Louisville. Then they beat Penn State. Then they beat Purdue. Purdue. Lost to Notre Dame, Ohio, and Penn State. Then to Pitt, Rice, USF, Texas State, Texas A&M, Memphis. Rice, I keep getting out of it. Wow, am I tired. Rutgers, good season for Rutgers. Good season. It was the BC and Syracuse, but then they beat Penn State. They blew them out. And then they became win every other game except for Illinois, the bowl game. Sam Houston, 5-8. Beat Rice, got killed by Texas State. UTEP, they got killed by Texas. Lost to North Texas. Lost only by 7 at Texas A&M. Got killed by South Carolina. San Diego State, they start off a big win, 2-0. They were ranked. Lost to Cal, 3-1. And then lost, and then got killed, lost. I'll have to figure in for next year. San Jose State, 1-11. They beat UNLV and lost every other game. Air Force, San Diego State could have been close. Racetrack game at Bristol. Then NC State, Tennessee, then Memphis. Barely escaped that. They could have made the playoffs again. Texas State was their biggest thing. If they would have won the conference title, they would have got in. And Utah, they killed in the bowl game. Texas could have won it all. Lost Texas State, no big deal. Beat Arkansas, got killed by Texas A&M. Beat Oregon, Clemson, lost LSU, who could have won it all. Texas A&M, lost Texas State. Beat Notre Dame. Beat Texas. Beat Texas State, then lost LSU. Texas State, very interesting. North Texas, Rice, beat Texas, Texas A&M. Lost Arkansas State, win. Beat Southern Miss, then got killed by Oklahoma and by Texas A&M. Texas Tech, a lot of points here. Lost to Texas, 62-55. Texas A&M, 59-31. Lost to Texas State by 3. Toledo, Western Michigan almost beat the national champs. They were 0-2. Beat AA, lost to Michigan State, Mississippi State. Oh, terrible thing. Miami, that win, got killed by Ohio State. Lost to Utah State. Beat Colorado State, Central Michigan, Akron. Beat Western Kentucky by 1. Troy beat Florida Atlantic. Beat South Alabama. Got beat by Miami. And Tulane lost to Oklahoma. Lost to Arkansas. Beat Missouri. Lost to USC. Tulsa lost to Oklahoma. Lost to Baylor. Lost to South Florida. UAB, respectable against Alabama. Respectable against Miami. Beat South Florida. Lost to Memphis. Not as bad as you'd think. They got killed by Florida, though. UCF beat Arizona State. Killed by Alabama. Lost to USF. UCLA lost to Oregon by 7. Beat Hawaii 94-30, the highest total of points. And lost to USC 94-30 though. UConn lost to Rutgers, lost to Penn State. Monroe oh, look at this. They lost that infamous 93-40 game. Wait a second. 93? UCLA had 94? 94. So it was 94. They went perfect. They lost everything. They almost beat Texas State. Almost beat Marshall. Played good against James Madison. Tulane. I mean, we're going to have... Look at that. They almost beat Missouri. UMass was good. Lost to Pitt. Lost to Syracuse. Got killed by Georgia. But then barely lost to Georgia Southern. UNLV, 4-9. Beat New Mexico, UConn, Hawaii, and San Diego State. Lost their bowl game. USC beat Boise State. Lost to Oregon by 3. Lost to LSU. Beat Notre Dame. Beat Oregon. Not a bad. They might have made it into the playoffs maybe next year. USF, well, they got killed there. Beat. And didn't play a ranked team all year. Utah, 7-7. They lost to Baylor by 3. And they got killed by Tennessee, but they beat Colorado in a conference title game. Utah State. Interesting year. They lost to BYU, beat Toledo, and then beat Miami in a bowl game, the Boise Bowl. UTEP got killed by Texas. Yeah, they played in the toilet bowl. UTSA, Oklahoma, they only lost by 12. We're close in a lot of these games. Memphis by 20, though. Baylor by a little bit more. Vanderbilt, 3 losses in a row. They lost to LSU only by 7. Beat Wake Forest, only lost to NC State by a little bit. Lost, should have beat Tennessee in that game, but lost. Virginia, lost to Pitt. Didn't play a ranked team, beat Michigan State. Virginia Tech, Clemson, Wake Forest 9-4. Beat Memphis, lost to Tennessee, beat NC State, lost to Miami. Washington, beat Arizona, beat Boise, lost to USC, lost to Penn State by 4. Lost to Oregon, beat BC by 10. Washington State, lost to Boise, beat USC. Lost to Oregon, beat Baylor in a bowl game. West Virginia, lost to Penn State. Lost to Rutgers by 3. Lost to Baylor by 1. Western Kentucky, lost to Alabama. Didn't really play any bowl teams or whatever. Loses to Toledo in a bowl. Western Michigan, 5-7. They didn't play too much. They lost to Indiana. They didn't play Ohio State or Michigan. Wisconsin, they lost to Notre Dame. They got killed by Alabama. Conference championship, they beat Notre Dame, knocked them out of the playoffs, and they got killed by Penn State. Wyoming, they won AA New Mexico and Hawaii. And then other games, they lost Arizona State, other things. So let's go to standings. There it is. There you can see. This is just for everybody. Michigan national champs. So that's the thing. These divisions were just way too big. You know, a lot of the championship games, there's the Sun Belt. Next year, it's going to be totally different. Let's take a look at statistics. Statistics, stats, and records. So let's go to season stats. Ready? This is all of them. You could take a look at your own thing. There was South Carolina at 5,000 yards, but you're going to see TCU at 6,000. That guy was incredible. You can pause it at your own volition. We're going to do everything here. We're going to go all the way back to Pitt. Remember, Pitt is the thing. Garbers had a lot. USC had a lot. I mean, we're looking at this. Oh, I'll just do national. So this is what you see, the highest rating. I'm gonna go over here and take a look. We're gonna do this. Then we're gonna hit our highest pass rating and our lowest ones. I mean, there's Drew Aller. So there we go. We want to take a look at rating. Here's our highest rated quarterback. Oh, look at that. That guy's terrible. For Central Michigan, 3 for 15, 3 interceptions. He has a negative rating. I guess the only, who was the worst rating that's full-time is this guy, Bryson Daly. But again, I'm not Navy, Army, and then there it is. McNamara, Cade McNamara, the worst rated guy that's actually, in there for NIL money and big stuff. The best rated guy is Clemens. Look at this freaking rating. Well, God, don't look at that. Who's the best all-time guy? Here it is. Sellers. Lenora Sellers, 343 of 464, 52 touchdowns, 13 picks. The most for yards is Hoover, 6,000 yards. Garbers and Morton. Shedeur Sanders threw for over 6,000. Shager. That's the thing, they threw a lot. About 50 times a game. Rushing. Your average for yards. Donovan Edwards, 16 games, 2,476 yards. The longest run of the year was 99 yards by Baxter, and we had that game. We had that game. Remember that. That was incredible. They were back to the 1-yard line. He went 99 yards. I'm wondering about the longest pass play. 99 for Carson Beck. And A.J. Duffy had a 99-yarder. So back there, and Duffy. Rushing-wise, you can see the average, the highest yard per carry, Dubinian. And then Edwards, Dylan Edwards was there. The long again was 99. The shortest was Benfield Wright. I mean, that's a little bit low. Receptions, 121 for Isaiah Bond, the national leader. Yards, Baldwin, Monray Baldwin. The average a game, Baldwin. The longest reception was Humphreys, Landon Humphreys. Downs played. I wonder if they have drop passes. They don't. Blocking wise, Number of sacks given up was Walden. Oh, God. Bram Walden, the left tackle. So he played a lot more, to be fair. Though Cooper for Pitt, no sacks. Look at that. You have a fewer. No sacks given up. Look at that blocking. Defense. Tackles. Solo assists, total tackles. Stutzman. Vincent. Keaton. I mean, they're always around the ball. Tackles for losses. James Pierce Jr., Heisman Trophy winner. Abdul Carter, really good. Sacks. James Pierce. He had 33.5. Abdul Carter had 29.5. Interceptions, 8 for Eaton. Interception longest, 100 for Richardson. Deflections, 23 for that guy. Safety by Parks and Afari. Oh, we got a lot coming. We got some crazy weather coming here. Kicking wise, I want to see if we missed an extra point. Yes, there was one missed extra point, and it was by Drew Blaney, and he missed an extra point. That was the only extra point missed. That was the only one, and it was blocked. So we got to go for that next year. Field goal made an attempt. I saw short ones. I want to take a look. I saw short ones. I'm very interested in kicking because you can really screw up a game by screwing up the kicking. Because if you make it an automatic 3, you screw it up. If you make it a nothing 3, if you make it realistic, then you're good. Smith was 37 of 46. The field goal percentage, the best was 14 of 14, 14 of 14, and then everybody, like there were some that missed a little bit. And then the worst field goal percentage was Isaiah Hankins. It hurt him. The longest field goal was 64 yards by Jonathan Kim. And Borgales 63. So 5 of 12 and 50-yarders, and he just nailed that one. So kicking, punting, the average, wow. Paul Clayton was terrible. And you go down the list. The best punter was Burnett. Not many. Ferguson Reynolds. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of this. Blocks, 3 were blocked. And I saw that. There were some that were blocked. Some punts. And the animation in that punt was get it back slowly. And then the punt. After it was slowly, the animation was back, it was slow, and then they'd go to kick. God, it would be scripted. Actually, season stats and records. Let's go here, let's go to national. National. Rushing, receiving. Kick returns. Now here's the thing for touchdowns. 3 of them by Bowman of Utah State. That was pretty good. I mean, there are a few kickoff touchdowns. There were a few of them. And then for your punt return, there was a few punt return touchdowns. So there we go. And then that'll be cool. All right, that's going to be it for us today. I'm going to eat food. And then when we come back tonight, it'll be basketball. Have a great day. That's the end of our season, really. Records. Well, let's see. National passing career. Let's go season. Let's go game. Hoover for TCU. 772 yards, rushing, receiving. Things that were both sacks, 7 in a game. That's it, really. Season. Hoover for a season. Receiving yards, Monterey. Baldwin was a record. Sacks, Caleb Herring with 41. And Baldwin for 30 touchdown catches. And Will Johnson for Michigan, he had 3 interceptions in 2 games. 20 for the stats. That happens. I don't see anybody right now. Albrosky? I don't know. Career, well, if you had 20, 29, whatever. That'll be big. All right. Have a great day, everybody. That is about it. That's it for our season. I just want to go find your team, whatever. And again, the bracket, it ended up like this. LSU National Championships in Georgia. Louisiana State University lost. No, LSU lost to Michigan. Michigan National Championships in Georgia, beating Louisiana State University. LSU. I don't know. You never know about the runs and who does what. So let's just put it this way. When you got the opportunity, you got to take it because you never know when you're going to get it again. Have a great day. I'll see you later.